going on, ladies and gentlemen? I am Mike Hughes, and you are listening to the Shot Kid podcast presented by iHeartRadio's very own Give Us a Shot Network. So make sure you give us a like, give us a follow already if you haven't, because I don't like to say it more than once. We try to do it in the beginning, we try to do it in the end. I don't like ads in the middle of the show because I usually go on very long rants that no one has time to miss, because tonight we got a very important guest, a man who's about to give some of the biggest news, some of the biggest drama as it pertains to Jed Hoyer and the Chicago Cubs. I got my dog of War Media, Miles Porter, joining the show. Champ, we got a champ in the building as well. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut that last part. That's one of the more important parts. The champ of 2024 is joining the show. Miles, how you feeling, baby?
Feeling good, man. Feeling good. Happy to be back, bro. I'm telling you, that is one of my favorite intros of any podcast, bro. I love that intro.
You know, I got a lot. I realized as I was watching it too. You know, I got a little comment earlier. I talked to you about it behind the show. November 1st, this viewer did not miss a beat. Said, "Hey, listen, I was cool with it during the season because obviously, you know, he's still a part of the 2024 team. But it's November 1st. You know, the Dodgers just had their parade. You got to get Christopher Morel out of your intro. He's a Tampa Bay Ray. Gotta go." And I'm like, you know what? Understandable, but also to that same point, I do believe I have preseason, not even preseason. I believe I have OTA videos of Caleb Williams at the very end. So it's been a few weeks now. I think I could add some dope stuff we've seen throughout the 2024 season. You know, I'm excited for it. I think we're gonna cook something up. Miles will be the first to see it, but we got a lot of stuff cooking up tonight as well, man. First, I want to get your opinion about the news of Nico Hoerner. Now, Nico Hoerner undergoes forearm surgery that could potentially keep him out at least in spring training. We don't know if he'll be quite ready by February. He was on 670 to score the other day, and they kind of asked him, you know, hey, are you going to be ready come February, March? He said it's way too early to put a timetable on that yet. So where are you at right now, both what you saw from Nico Hoerner in the 2024 season, which he even vocally said, you know, defensively, he felt his arm kind of lingering a little bit with the injury, but offensively, this guy's batting over 300 in the month of September. So to really put the team on his back the way he did, what did you really see from him this season?
You know, I loved, you know, most of what I saw from Nico this season. I know that there was a stretch of time where he wasn't really hitting in the beginning and then really turned it on towards the end. Nico's one of those players that I've always wanted the Cubs to do their best to keep around. And it's kind of difficult right now with the position the Cubs are in terms of having to make moves. Guys, there's certain guys that we're gonna have to move them at some point. You know, I want him on this roster. I want to see him play well, but at the same time, we got some young guns coming up, and unfortunately, this injury that you know, the surgery that's taking place, yeah, he'll be sidelined for a bit next year. But I like that it gives the younger guys an opportunity, kind of forces Jed to move some of these pieces around that he's been excited about. We've seen Jed; he is hell bent on these prospects, rightfully so. They're very good. So I got mixed feelings about it, but I want to wish him a speedy recovery because, you know, he's important. And I guess depending on what the Cubs do, how they play by the deadline next season, he might be a good trade piece.
For sure, for sure. And I think, you know, we kind of had those conversations around the trade deadline that Nico Hoerner could potentially be available. We heard that teams like the Seattle Mariners definitely were making phone calls, just checking on the availability. Because the Cubs were never really in the race. You know, we never really felt like we were until later in the second half when, of course, I call it false hope August. You know, you and I got a full effect of that in person this year at Wrigley Field. So, but, you know, it's funny because during the offseason, this past offseason, during spring training, I said it would be very interesting to see a guy like James Triantos potentially be on the block. And a couple places I thought he would be very good at. The Cleveland Guardians. And I also felt like the Seattle Mariners were a team that definitely could use a guy like James Triantos. Oddly enough, there are rumors coming out that the Cleveland Guardians were very interested in Nico Hoerner, which is kind of funny to me because him and James are so similar in their offensive production and their play style. Obviously, Nico Hoerner, I mean, defensively, I'm one of the best, if not the best, second baseman in baseball. And if you look at the numbers, he has the top 3 most hits out of any second baseman over the last 3-4 years. So it's really impressive to see what he's been able to do, but it made me chuckle a little bit because that is kind of the standard of who James Triantos is he is going to be your next Nico Hoerner. At this point of time, I think it's very hard to make that conversation. Hey, can the Cubs potentially get a big star from the Cleveland Guardians? Is it potential you could trade James Triantos, B.J. Murray, Matt Shaw to acquire somebody like that? It's a hard topic now because you don't know the availability of Nico Hoerner come March, come April.
Right.
So do you think any of the infielder positions get moved, prospect or not, at any point this offseason with the uncertainty of Nico?
Yeah, I think maybe. I think there's always, well, not always that possibility with this management. No offense. Um, I think that there's always room for it, right? I think we learned that this past season, that there's always kind of room to move some things around. Um, I think, I mean, if we're talking about the infield, I think the Cubs are pretty set on Michael Bush. I like what I saw from Michael Bush last year, but then again, if Pete Alonso's available, a guy that I look at, I'm like, okay, maybe this could be a good piece. I think it's good to be open minded. I do not want them to be closed minded when it comes to moving some pieces around. I mean, Isak Paredes is great at third, but also we're not getting a lot of power out of him. So what do we want to do at that position? Do we want to bring Matt Shaw up to some? So it's, I think it is very important for Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins to be open minded in terms of what they can move and how flexible they are. I worry that the Cubs feel a little bit more stagnant than they actually are. They have the ability to make more moves than what we saw this year. If Nico Horner's down, Miles Mastrobuoni is not the only answer. He's just not. There's other players that we can look to. So I think we'll see. I guess it depends on the management.
For sure, for sure. And I think, like you said, I'm tired of seeing Miles, respectfully. Miles Mastrobuoni needs to get out of here. And only Miles I want to see at Wrigley Field next year is Miles Porter, baby. That's it. That's it. I don't need to
Oh,
see
me
anybody
and my
else.
brother at the game.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I don't need this guy playing third base whatsoever. Even though every time I say something bad about Miles Mastrobuoni, he always proves me wrong.
Yeah.
But I will say this. Listen, I was talking to Brandon Birdsell the other day, minor league pitcher of
Mm-hmm.
the year for the Cubs. And I did ask him, you spent a lot of time in Iowa, the second half of the year for the majority.
Yep.
Who is somebody that you believe from a position standpoint could make the opening day roster or have significant playing time in 2025? And he actually said it was Matt Shaw. And I think that's really where I'm at right now. As you bring up Isaac, I think Matt is one of those guys that, let's say Nico misses a little bit of time. You bring up
Yeah.
Matt Shaw, really see what he's going to be able to bring to this organization. Spent a little bit of time in Iowa this year, and I think he's really been productive. James Triantos, obviously, Arizona Fall League MVP of
Mm-hmm.
2023. He had an amazing 2024 season for the Cubs. They're putting him a little bit of everywhere, putting him at second, putting him in the outfield, just trying to get a feel for what he's been able to do in the minor leagues thus far. He's been very productive. I think there's a lot of guys that could really rise to that occasion. And the guy like
Yeah.
B.J. Murray, he was in the All-Stars future game as well not too long ago. So I definitely think Nico missing time isn't the most significant thing in the world,
Right.
especially if it's just a rehab from an off-season surgery. This isn't something that catastrophically happened in the month of January. This is kind of a cleanup, kind of get everything going on with him. Now it's a big surgery, nonetheless. We're not, taking anything away from that, but I wouldn't be too upset about it. You know what I mean? I'm very confident that he'll be okay for the start of the season. But man, let's get into it, man. Let's talk a little bit of free agency before we get into anything. I just want to say I see the comments around TikTok. We're doing a lot of things, and I see the Juan Soto comments. I'm gonna tell you something right now. I worked facilities and grounds crew for the Chicago Cubs for 4 summers, and a brother could not get 16.50 by the hour. If you think we're getting $500 million plus Juan Soto, you're crazy. It's not happening whatsoever. I'm out here waking up butt crack of dawn, 5 a.m. every single day, hosing seats, pulling tarp, doing the grounds. I mean, power washing, whispering, everything around the moon. I'm making 15 an hour. If you think they're breaking the bank, making 500 mil when they haven't even gone over 250 in their career, I don't see it whatsoever. But Miles, humor me a little bit if you can, or do you kind of agree that Juan Soto is completely out of question for the Chicago Cubs this year?
I think he is completely out of question. I think it makes sense for the Cubs to try to go and get him, but I think it's out of question. This team is so hell bent on just not spending money correctly. Um, I would love to see Juan Soto at Wrigley this year. I think another important, piece to this that we need to talk about is Wrigley was a very difficult stadium to hit in this year. I believe it was
Mm,
the second worst stadium in
yeah,
MLB. Look, if you're going to try to convince a star to come here and be like, hey, come to Wrigley Field, we're going to pay you X amount. If he wants a certain amount, he deserves that certain amount, especially if his aspects of his stats are going to take a hit. That's also not very appealing to a lot of guys.
mm,
On top of the weather, now my power numbers are going to go down, and
yeah.
it's cold for 2 months of the season. You're not going to pay me. I'll take my talents. I'll take my talents to the Mets. I'll stay with the Yankees. I'll go to whoever. You know what I mean? So you
Right.
gotta. The Cubs cannot be cheap. They just can't, and I think they understand that, and they do not want to take that risk.
For sure. I agree. And I also think that short porch in New York is definitely worth over $100 million in negotiations at minimum because you're looking at a career year from Juan Soto this year.
Oh my
I mean, he
god!
was absolutely phenomenal. You and I were there in person with Gabe and Saul. We saw 3 home runs in one game against the Chicago White Sox, which
Got
was
the video on my
incredible.
phone of your reaction. Oh my
Oh
gosh!
my gosh. Like I think about it all the time. Like I've never geeked out like that. I've seen Miguel Montero's game one grand slam in the NLCS. We've seen
Mm-hmm.
Shota Imanaga throw a no-hitter. We've seen a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah,
Uh but that performance was just effortless, and the swag that he commanded, and the shakeup with Aaron Judge at home plate, there was just nothing like it. But overall, this year, man, you're looking at a 7.9 WAR and 576 at bats. He had 166 hits, 41 home runs, a 288 batting average, 128 runs, 109 RBIs, and 7 stolen bases, which the stolen bases one always gets me because I just think Juan is just so talented. I kind of forget that he's not the greatest base runner, but he looks like
right,
he can be. You know what I
right,
mean?
yeah,
Like I don't
right.
know. It's just me personally. I would if you told me he had 15, 20 stolen bases, I'd believe it. But
One hundred percent.
it's definitely a career year for Juan Soto. He's coming up 26 years old. The sky is really the limit, and I think that's really the conversation right now. Is this is not a guy who's 30 years old. This is a guy who arguably is entering his prime, if not
Yeah.
hasn't entered it yet.
Yes.
Uh, you're looking at what would you say, 500 to $600 million? Do you think he
Hmm.
teeters Shohei's contract?
I don't know if he teeters it, but I think he is definitely a little bit south of it. I think you got it right. Nothing south of 500, 600 mil.
For sure, for sure. And I don't know, man. I see it. I see him in a Cubs uniform. I was talking to my guy
I
at
do
Obvious
too.
Shirts about it, and I'm like, yo, we got to start making, Juan Soto looks better at Wrigley t-shirts. Like
Yeah.
it would fit.
Hmm.
But I definitely think the way Jed thinks and the way this organization has thought in years past, it's very difficult for a guy who plays the outfield position to get some tick with the Cubs org right now because we just have so much. We have so much, and we're gonna find out probably within the next upcoming days whether or not Cody Bellinger opts out. But say he opts in for whatever reason, you have Cody Bellinger, P. Crow Armstrong, then you have two non-tradable contracts in Ian Happen, Seiya Suzuki. You have Owen Casey, Kevin Alcantara. Jed's looking at that and he's like, I don't need another outfielder. Brother, it's not about the position. It's about the player. And that's really what it comes down to. None of those guys are even sniffing what Juan Soto has been able to put together. But I want your opinion on this. I've never really asked it to you in this way. What do you think is the reason Jed is so hell bent on keeping all of these prospects? And do you think it has anything to do with his time working under Theo and kind of seeing how Theo made trades that at the time made sense, but as you look back on it, you kind of say, I wish we still had that guy.
100%. I think he knows the value of sort of bringing up a core that works well together, and part of me thinks that he's also maybe taking a page out of Baltimore's book as well. We see how they've kind of just brought up this young core together, and we see how good they are. They're obviously still developing. We saw what happened to them in the very early rounds this year. Yeah, I think he's just afraid to make a financial mistake. So he is not willing to take a risk, even though
Mm,
I'm sure that there are risks that he wants to take. But he hasn't taken them. Instead, he's distributing a little bit of money here, a little bit of money there. So it's like, Jed, you're still doing it, bro. Like you're still like you're trying to avoid it, but you're just doing it in a different way. We still owe money to guys that haven't been on the Cubs for periods. We still owe money to Tucker Barnhart. So it's, it's these little things where it's just like I'm curious as to what if we're gonna kind of spread this money out and give like little safe contracts here and there.
Right.
It all still adds up. Why are we not at least taking a risk on a player who we know is almost guaranteed to produce for us?
Mhm. No,
That's
I'm with you.
that's where we all kind of question that.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I literally only remember Tucker Barnhart for the 14-inning game against the Miami Marlins a couple
Yes.
years ago. Was there for that. We lost that game, but
Love
Tucker
that.
Barnhart had me losing my voice by the end of that. So, shout out Tucker Barnhart.
Yeah, Reds
But
legend.
no, in all seriousness, man, you kind of look at this roster right now as it's constructed. There's a few players and a bunch of advertisements that I cannot get rid of, so I apologize for that. But this episode is not sponsored by any of these mofos. Make sure you don't check them out. But you're looking at it right now. Cody Bellinger, 29 years old, in a down year. We'll call it a down year. I'm not going to say an all-time down year, but it definitely was. You're looking at Cody Bellinger in the 2024 season. Obviously, you and I talked about it throughout the offseason that a lot of people, including, the Marquee Network and Lance Brosdowski, brought up the fact that his exit velo was at an all-time low in
Mm-hmm.
2023. And I was one of those guys that said, well, dinger is dinger, whether it's in the basket or it's on Waveland. I don't care. But the reality is, that did creep in. And the injuries between the rib injury and the fractured finger or the broken finger, whatever the situation was, he does have an opt out, and he could opt out of a $27.5 million deal. And I think there definitely will be teams potentially interested in Cody Bellinger, especially if Juan Soto ends up signing elsewhere. I think the New York Yankees will definitely be one of those teams lingering to kind of see what happens with Juan, and then we'll find out what happens with Cody if he does opt out. But those are one of the free agents. Number two, you and I were there for potentially his final goodbye. Kyle Hendricks, 34 years old, almost 35. He is an unrestricted free agent. Don't really know what happens with Kyle. I think you could make a case that he retires. I think you could also say he signs with the Los Angeles Dodgers and ends up being the next Greg Maddux because they always do great things with their pitching staff. Drew Smiley, David Bodie, who has a club option, that the richest man in Iowa is what I've called him over the last few years. And then obviously you have Jorge Lopez, who didn't pitch that much this year. Obviously, we acquired him from the Mets after his debacle, which I bet, looking back on it, I bet Lopez wishes he didn't kind of throw the tantrum he did because the Mets
Yeah,
went on one hell of a run.
yeah.
But these aren't very notable players, I would say. Outside of, and you know what, not outside of, but Kyle Hendricks is really the only guy that you're kind of bidding farewell to. But even
Mhm.
then, it's not a significant loss. So out of those guys, do you see anybody returning? Whether that's Cody Bellinger, just opting into his contract, or maybe David Bodie sneaks it in with Jed Hoyer one last time.
Yeah, if somehow David Bodie has stuck around all these years in the minors. That is incredible. I remember I was at Bodie's walk off. Um,
Were you really?
yeah, I was at yes, I was at the Nationals walk off and then the walk off. Forgot him and Rizzo went back to back. I was at
Mhm.
that game as well. Um, I mean, really, I really could see Belly coming back. I think this was kind of a weird year for Belly. There's still a market for him, like we know that.
Mhm.
But I could see him coming back. I could also see Jorge Lopez coming back because he did kind of figure it out when he was here. So
Right.
out of those two players specifically, one of them I could see them, if not both of them, coming back. The rest of the guys listed, I would not be surprised if we do not see them in Cubs jersey, in Cubs pinstripes next year.
Right.
Especially Drew Smiley. As much as Drew Smiley's weird, he's a weird guy. We have
Yes.
stretches of time where he has like a 1.6 ERA, and then it's one game. It's one game every single week. He has that one game where he gives up at least 4 earned runs, and then Craig thinks to himself, "Oh wait, now I should take him out."
Right. No, for sure. I'm with you. And I think, my thing with Drew is really just identity, and
Mm-hmm.
continuity. And I can't provide him with continuity because I don't think he's great at either spot, whether that's coming out of the pen or whether that's in the starting rotation. You kind of have him on short days where he comes in and starts the first 2 innings and then boom,
Yes.
it's a bullpen day right after
Mm-hmm.
that. But that's not somebody I want on this roster. That's not somebody that I even want to be a part of this organization
Mhm.
because I'm not looking for bullpen days. I understand the Dodgers, who had the most bullpen days I've ever seen in a postseason run, just won a championship, but we are not the Los Angeles Dodgers, so I don't
We
see
are
that
not.
happening whatsoever. Um, but I'm gonna get this ugly graphic out of here because I couldn't squeeze it in the right way, but I want to show it to you really quickly off rip.
Uh,
According to Fox, these are the top free agents of 2025. You got Juan Soto at 1, Corbin Burns at 2. You have Blake Snell potentially if he opts out, Alex Bregman, Willie Adames, Max Fried, Pete Alonso, Teoscar Hernandez. We got Big Ant and Christian Walker. So I kind of want to break that down with you. Really where you're at right now as it pertains to free agency because there are a lot of guys, and I'm gonna pull it up really quick before we get into it as a whole because there are guys that I think we can definitely get into with, especially going into this year. Now we already were top 10 in payroll. That's no secret to anybody.
mhm.
But I definitely do think the Cubs can make some waves this year. So is there anybody that you see either on this list or just in general that you have your eye on that you want to add to this ball club?
I have a pretty strong eye on Pete Alonso.
Mm,
I know I mentioned him before. I think he'll add some power to this team. I think we are lacking power in this team. I think this is a team that we've actually done a good job of pretty much hitting line drives. We are like we were kind of a base to base team this year.
mm,
Now I would just love to get a bopper in there that would drive us all in. Alex Bregman, a guy who also kind of stands out to me. Now I know, Jed, you're so sold on Eastside, but at least be a little bit open minded to
yeah.
some of these other options that are available. I would love that. I would love to see Alex Bregman patrol third. I think he would fit in really well, with the Cubs fan base. And it ain't gonna happen. I gotta say it. I want Rizzo back. And now I know it's not gonna be the same Rizzo that we had. I don't care. I want Riz back. I said what I said.
No, I'm with you. And I was actually going to bring that up because we're talking about Pete Alonso.
Yeah.
First and foremost, talking to my guy, Mikey Powers, diehard Mets fan.
Mm-hmm.
I think all Mets fans believe that Pete Alonso is going to be a Met for life, at least at this point in time, or at least offered a contract that would suggest such. He might have a couple years where at the end of his career where he's wherever. We see that all the time, but definitely for the most part, I think he's going to be a Met. And I think especially after this postseason, Steve Cohen would be foolish not to bring him back, especially, obviously having a Scott Boras agent. I don't think Jed wants to deal with Boras. I think he's already dealing with Cody. We saw how far into the offseason that went last year. I remember
Yeah.
doing the 2, 3 a.m. episode where I'm like, oh my God, it finally, I could sleep. I could sleep now. I just have to worry about Justin Fields' trade. And the man waited until St. Patrick's Day, the one day off I have a year to finally do it. But no, man. In all seriousness, I want Riz back, and I know that sounds crazy. I know that sounds very unrealistic, especially with a phenomenal season from Michael Busch in his rookie year. I believe he batted 240 around the low 240s with over 20 home runs on the year
Yeah.
and pretty great defensive first base play. Like I can't lie. And I'm not gonna say he's a Gold Glover, but for this being his true rookie year, he was phenomenal. 23 home runs in his career, only 2 as a Los Angeles Dodger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he wishes he was a Los Angeles Dodger right now, but Big Bush did his thing, man, and we got to see him actually get his get back against the Dodgers earlier in April and May. So I'm big on Bush, and I think Anthony Rizzo is somebody who I believe whether we talk about it or not, I think this team lacks a true leader. And I truly do believe bringing back Rizzo changes things. I think Dansby Swanson has done a phenomenal job as a leader of this ball club. Nico Horner has stepped up in a lot of ways. I've talked to a lot of people, whether that's at Marquee or whether they work on the grounds crew. Just kind of breaking down what they see from Dansby. He's talking to everybody from Adbert to Nico to the pitching staff to everybody around the sun. I definitely love that, but I don't think it's on the field as much.
Right.
And I think that's one of my main issues is you need a leader on the field. Justin Steele can't run into the dugout, tell everybody to wake the F up, and then everybody just looks at him and then goes 0 for 3 the rest of the day or the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the week. We're going 0 for
Mm-hmm.
12. And it's like, for me, when I look at this entire free agency list, I think you have to unpack it as okay, the big fish, the bigger fish,
Hmm.
And then there's the guys the Cubs are gonna get. That's really how you and I have felt over the last few years. So
Yes.
I think immediately, as everybody is checking in on the availability of a Juan Soto or a Corbin Burns, because I would love Corbin Burns on the Chicago Cubs, but I just think everybody's going to be going after those two big guys. And
Yeah.
I think for the
Exactly.
Chicago Cubs, looking at a Blake Snell is kind of where I'm at. Is okay, Gabe. Maybe Blake's looking for a 2-3 year deal, and we can add him to this rotation. If you have Shota Imanaga, Justin Steele, who else we got? Jameson Tyone, Blake
Hmm.
Snell. I mean, the list goes on, and
Yeah.
you're kind of looking at the young guys that we have coming up. I think it's perfect because what I don't want, Miles, and you can let me know if I'm tweaking, because I could be. I love Cade Horton. I love the guys that we have in this farm system at the pitching position. Ben Brown, friend of the pod. We just hit him up the other day. We'll see how he's doing. But I think you have to give those guys opportunities as well. And I think bringing in a
Yeah.
Corbin Burns on a $200 million 5-year deal prevents that. So I think bringing in a guy like Blake, who, okay, 2025, we're going to compete until guys like Cade are available. Blake, you can opt out after 2025 if you want. Whatever happens, happens. Jameson
Hmm.
Tyone will be gone by then as well. That's really where I'm at. I think there's a few guys that we can kind of look at and say, we're good. We'll pass on that. And I think as much as I want Corbin Burns, and don't get it twisted, if we sign Corbin Burns, I'm jumping for joy and I'm out here. But I
Yeah.
kind of look at a Verlander, I look at a Max Caesar, I look at a Garrett Cole and say, hey, if we can get them on a cheaper deal, I'm not too upset about it whatsoever. So that's really where I'm at right now. But am I lowballing how important this offseason is?
No, no, not at all. It's clear that we were missing pieces, and the reality is we got some guys that are not untouchable in a sense where we don't want them to go, but because of certain contracts that we have, there are guys that we cannot really move. So, yes, would it be convenient if we had a Corbin Burns? That would be great. I'm also good with the guys that we got and the guys that we have coming up. We know that we need an update. We need to upgrade these bats a little bit. And
Mm,
and I don't want to just point to the weather at Wrigley. Wrigley's been around for God knows how long. It's not going anywhere. 100+ year stadium. So no, I don't think you're lowballing it. I think the emphasis on this offseason definitely has to be offense,
for sure.
and improving the pitching and developing these young guys, developing Ben Brown, who I got to be honest with you, bro. I want to see Ben Brown as a starter, man. I
Mm.
don't really always want to see Ben Brown out of the book. He is so good. He is so fun to watch. He has that fastball that kind of rises, and Ben Brown he's a dog, man. It's important for them to focus on that in terms of pitching and do something with these bats. Get a leader, man. Get a
Yeah,
leader.
for
I'm
sure.
tired of seeing this team hit home runs, look at each other. They might as well just handshake each other. Hey, good job, buddy. Hey, good job. Thank you. All
You
right.
know
Yeah,
who's you know who's number one at that, right?
I don't want to say it. I'm gonna let you say it.
Oh, go ahead. No, you can say it. I want to hear you
Mm-mm.
say it.
No, no, no.
Your
I
biggest, your favorite player, in the whole wide world. Who's your favorite
listen,
player,
man.
man?
Look.
No,
Hold on.
no.
Wait a minute. That's just his personality. We can't just look to him. We can't look to Ian. Okay, Ian. We cannot just. I was trying to avoid saying his name. We can't just look to Ian Happ. That's never been his role.
I understand. I
That,
understand. No, I'm with you. No, Miles and I have gone to war in the bleachers all summer long about and all spring long about my hate for Ian Happ, and it's nothing about Ian the person. It's just as the player, I don't know. It's something. And you know what though? What's most frustrating is I think I have that problem with Ian because I feel that way about the majority of the team. And I think I just direct my anger at Ian, but it's not specifically at him. It frustrates me because we have so many guys that'll give you 20 home runs and 80 RBIs a year, but at the end of the day, we're putting up 1 run, 2 run ball games. And then
yes.
I'm like, how does everybody have all of these dingers, all
Mm,
of these RBIs throughout the entire year, and then you look at our record and we only win 80 fucking games? That
mhm.
it doesn't add up. And I think that's the big problem for me is when you see all the 1 run games, when you see all the blown leads. To be quite honest, as frustrated as I am with Ian Happ, as
Mhm.
frustrated as I am, see, I'm doing it again. As frustrated as I am with this offense, not specifically Ian Happ, who had a
Yeah.
great year, and I will give him his flowers. He had a great year. I still don't believe Gold Glove defense can be in left field, but I do think he is one of the better defensive outfielders in baseball. My big thing for me, man, is really just the 20 plus blown ninth inning leads that we had. I mean, we could have had 20 plus saves this year that either Adbert gave away or Yency
Mhm.
gave away or Hector, heart attack Hector gave away before, Craig Counsell finally realized not only can you not be in the 9 spot, you can't be on this roster. And
Right.
for me, man, you're looking at a team that could have won 90 plus games if they just wouldn't have blown the lead. And I think that's a big part of it as well. That's a big part of
Yes.
the confidence boost and the morale of the team. So bullpen's definitely going to be a big thing that I think we look at. And as I look towards what we have going on, especially from a closer perspective, I still don't think you can just answer those questions by just bringing in a bunch of bullpen guys. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
think for me, you kind of look at the closers in 2024 and it was weird. It was very interesting to see what happened.
Mhm.
Um, and I want to kind of show you this list right here
Yeah.
because it doesn't make me feel any better about free agency. Um, there is one guy that I'm a huge fan of, but it's mainly his the way he goes about his day. I see a Joe Kelly, and I would be very interested to grab Joe Kelly. Um, but looking at this list, man, I don't see a lot. Okay, bring back a Aroldis Chapman who's about to be 37 years old.
Right.
Um, Daniel Bard, who there's conversations about it, but I just don't see it realistically happening. But is there anybody that is notably worth taking a look at for you?
Man, I got an eye on a roll to Chapman. Or oh no, hold on, wait, no, Blake Trinan. Let me just say this right now. The movement on his pitches during this I've never seen it before.
Mm,
That's a guy that I think would add crazy value to our bullpen and just whatever role he's in. I can see him as a closer.
yeah,
Um,
for sure.
I don't know if it'll happen, but I would like to see Devin Williams maybe get a chance in Chicago.
Mm,
I know that there are certain questions in terms of how he's able to finish games because he's had a couple of weird blown saves.
yeah.
I'm not mad at him for what happened against the
Phenomenal up until that point, though. I mean, I couldn't remember the last time he blew a save prior to the playoffs this year.
Exactly. And people are questioning his stuff. I'm not questioning nothing that dude got. That he's a dog, and I think even looking at someone like Aroldis Chapman, who is he's just doing side missions now, bro. He's just jumping from team to team, throwing 104. Why not bring him around?
Yeah.
Not
As long as
interested
he's
in
not hanging
bringing.
out with his mom too much, I think we'll be pretty good. But mm, why? What happened? What happened?
Yeah. So
What happened?
lost my train of thought after that. That was really funny.
But no, I'm with you. And the only reason, like for me, the only reason I didn't mention Blake is because I'm like, and this is me thinking, like I gotta remember in 2016, Dexter
Mhm.
Fowler decided to sign with the St. Louis Cardinals rather than return for to be a Cub.
Yeah.
So guys definitely do leave, whether that's just for wanting some change or maybe
Hmm.
just, hey, maybe the money was better, the situation was
Yeah.
better. But I don't see the Dodgers letting him go, especially after the turmoil season they had at the starting pitching position throughout the season. Like you kind of see how everyone's shitting right now on our guy Kershaw. And they're like, oh, participation trophy wasn't even a part of it. Why is he running around shirtless, drinking beers? You're right. Tyler Glasnow was not available. Walker Buehler was horrible the majority of the year. Clayton Kershaw, I don't think I saw him throw one pitch this year, like live in person. Like I didn't see any game, didn't see him contribute really anything.
Right.
And for me, man, I definitely think they're going to stay heavy on that bullpen. I think guys like Michael Kopech, which shout out Michael Kopech, by the way, for getting his first World Series ring.
Yeah, good for you,
Um,
bro. Quite the
very, I mean,
situation you got out of there.
I mean, first it's a blessing to get out of there because that's hard on your mental health already. But I do
Yeah.
remember fans being very hard on him with all the mental health struggles that he had early on in
Hmm.
his career. So for
Yeah.
him to be at the top of the mountain, I hope he soaks that in because guys
True.
like that truly do deserve it. We understand every day is an uphill battle, so it's definitely great to see someone like that be at the top for once. But with that being said, I really don't know, man. I don't know. I know maybe at some point in 2025 we see Adbert, but again, like I don't really know how I even feel about that because
Yeah.
it's just at the end of the day, Adbert had Tommy John, if I'm not mistaken,
Hmm.
and I remember it was an elbow injury, but I couldn't remember if it was TJ. I remember I didn't even care because of how horrible he was all year, but I definitely think if we do see him, it's at the very butt end of the year, and what version of him do we get? This bullpen has a lot of questions, and Miles, for me, that's where I think when it pertains to the bullpen, I think there will be free agent signings, but I think a big name will fall to the Chicago Cubs via trade. And I think Jed has to understand that right now. I think for me, you look at all these prospects we have, and we can pull up the list. Like, I mean, let's you know what, Miles? We could pull up the list.
Let's take a peek, man.
We
Let's
have
look
we
at
have
it.
a little bit of time, brother.
Let's look at it.
We could figure this out.
Yeah,
But I'm looking at the share screen. I'm gonna pull it up. Really just breaking down the top prospects in the Cubs system. Um, I I don't really get it, man. I don't get why some of these guys are still on the roster, especially with how they've all continued to just compete with one another.
yeah.
And that's gonna be one of my biggest issues that we break down right here. So, Miles, what is I want your opinion. What's your biggest note of the top 10 prospects in the Cubs system right now?
I have a very close eye on Moises Ballesteros, bro. This guy is good. This kid can hit. Um, this is what I'm just. I think Miguel Amaya. I think he is such a good person. I think we saw some great things out of him, especially in the last part of the season. I think a lot of guys sort of heated up towards the August September time. Um, but I think he also got ran on a lot this year, and I kind of want to see this kid get a chance. Um, I'm looking forward to Cam Smith in a few years when he comes up. What does that mean for these other guys? If Cam
Exactly.
Smith starts balling and he's ready in about 3-4 years, give him a chance. Get him up
Right.
here. What are we waiting for? Um, yeah, man. Yeah,
That's where I'm at. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the last point, because here's my biggest issue, right? What I notice out of this is, yeah, Moises is insanely talented, and he is the outlier out of this entire group because he's one of the only guys, actually the only guy at his position. Obviously, he plays a little bit of first base, plays a little bit of catcher, hasn't played a lot at the AAA level at the catching position, but
right.
we're seeing him right now in fall league, absolutely tearing and ripping up baseballs. So I love what we're seeing. I
Yeah,
do believe whether he's good at the catching position or not, he is light years better than Kyle Schwarber was when he was in this farm system. So I say give him an opportunity. Miguel Amaya defensively was not a great catcher whatsoever, and also, early on in Wilson Contreras' career, he wasn't a great catcher. So
right.
I definitely, and when we talk about catcher, I'm not talking about throwing guys out, hosing guys out at third or second. I'm talking legitimately framing,
Yeah,
legitimately making calls, correct calls to whatever pitcher you're going on every single day, 1 through 5 in that rotation. I believe Moises should get that opportunity to do so and split time with Miguel Amaya. Obviously, Yan Gomes is gone, so we're definitely going to see what happens with that. But right here, I see a lot of guys who play the same position. Now, Owen Casey's going to be your left-handed power bat, especially with Cody Bellinger likely opting out. So, boom, right there, immediately, you're going to plug in Owen Casey, I would imagine, by opening day. Whether that's off the bench or not, I have no idea. In my perfect world, I think you're going to DH Seiya Suzuki. You're going to put Owen in right field, and you're going to
yeah.
have PCA in center and Ian in left.
Hmm.
That's really where I would go at it, especially it just keeps Seiya healthy, keeps things going just because of his oblique injuries. But my big problem, Matt Shaw, James Triantos, Cam Smith, Rojas, Cruz, the list goes on.
Yeah,
These are guys who kind of all play the same position more than
yeah,
not. And I think that's kind of my biggest frustration is when you already have Isaac Paredes, when you already have Nico Horner and Dansby Swanson, why is every single one of these guys still here? That's
yeah.
that's the biggest question, because Miles, like you made a great point. In 2-3 years, we are going to see Cam Smith, who has also been obliterating baseballs since getting drafted just a few months ago. He's already in Double A.
Hmm.
Isaac Paredes is only here until I believe 2027. So that is a perfect timeline for Cam to continue developing into who we think he can potentially be. But a
Yes.
guy like Matt Shaw is ready right now. A guy like James Triantos is ready right now. So to have all of them there, but just to group them in Iowa, the biggest frustration to me is I think, and I know this is very long winded, so I apologize,
No,
but
it's fine. Yeah.
Jed Hoyer is preparing for the core now, the core later, and the
Hmm.
core after that. And that's my biggest problem is when you see a team like the Los Angeles Dodgers, unfortunately, we are in an era where you cannot give a fuck about the 2035 Chicago Cubs. You cannot care about the 2029 Chicago Cubs because Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Shohei Ohtani just showed you that even if Shohei goes 2 for 20, they are going to win the World Series at ease.
Exactly.
And that's where you have to start bringing in star power to compete with your competitors. And I think even if, let's say, the Dodgers fall apart, the Yankees are still right there. You know, there's still so many organizations that have the league by the balls. So these guys right here, if I'm Jed Hoyer, I'm moving 3 of them this
Yeah.
offseason. And
Yeah.
whether that's packaging them all together to get a giant haul or smaller moves, I'm definitely into it. Like, you know, I told you straight up, yo, James Triantos for Class A, let me have it. And that was at the beginning of the year. So obviously we saw that Class A is likely untouchable moving forward, I would
Yeah.
say. The only
Yeah.
closer I've seen play every single fucking day. But
Yes.
yeah, so guys like James, unfortunately, you know, a
Yeah.
friend of the pod, great kid, but I just don't. It's just it's unfair. It's unfair to James. It's unfair to Matt. It's
Yeah.
unfair to Kevin Alcantara and all these guys
Yeah.
who are so ready, but just aren't given the opportunity. And Kevin's another one of those guys as well. You know, like you
Yeah.
and I talk about it all the time. Ian Happ, no trade clause. Seiya Suzuki, no trade clause. Owen Casey, left-handed power bat. P. Crow Armstrong's made his mark. Maybe Cody Bellinger's back. Maybe he's not. But
Mhm.
there is no room for Kevin Alcantara
Right.
unless he extremely shows up and shows out in spring training, showing that he's way better than Owen. But regardless, one of these outfielders is going to have to be traded.
Yeah.
As point blank period, because you can't trade the other two. And why we added no trade clauses to Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki's contract is beyond me, especially when Seiya had no MLB experience prior to that. So I don't know. But is there anybody? I know that was super long winded, but is there anybody that notably you think could be on the move this offseason?
I think you hit the nail on the head, bro. I really think you did. I think we can't just hoard these players. And while Jed is constantly preaching this organization's in the good, God, that postseason press conference made me so mad. He says it was a whole
I
bunch of
remember my phone blowing up. Ding 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 ding. I'm like,
yeah.
someone died. Something happened. Something
Um,
horrible just happened in life. It's just Miles listening to the press conference.
yeah, I can't be listening to these things while I'm in the office, man. I get pissed off while I'm at work. I think, bro, we're in a good position in terms of being able to move some of these guys and get a good return.
Mm-hmm.
That is kind of how I want Jed to look at it, because like you said, it's also unfair to these guys who are going to be ready soon. If not, they are ready now. I hate that is from a ball player's perspective, because these guys deserve to be in an organization where they're going to get a chance and they're going to be treated, not as like a late September, late season out of the playoff contention to call up.
Yeah.
There's going to be teams that are gonna treat them right. Maybe a team like the Brewers finds value in these guys. Just these teams that you know they pick them up, and then all of a sudden 2 years later we see them at the All-Star game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for Jed to know, like, hey, I'm happy that we have these prospects. I love all these guys. I'm so excited for them. But I think what you said was perfect. You have to think about what's going on now. You can't just prepare for all these different eras of Cubs baseball, because at the end of the day, if you're preparing for all these different eras, you do kind of put the present in the back burner.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way. We have pieces that we could work with to become a winning ball club. As we're seeing on the screen right now, got to find a way to move some of these guys. You got to make tough decisions financially, and just in terms of, you got to take a risk. You have
No,
to.
for sure.
With the way this organization is going, we're never going to go to the back of the World Series. We're never going to win a playoff series, because we have to get through the Braves, the Phillies, the Mets, the Dodgers. We get to the World Series, we got to play the Yankees. We got to play we're not built like these other teams, but we
Right.
can be.
And I think like that's the nail on the head, man. It really is, because I understand there are outliers. There are the Baltimore Orioles who have just done a phenomenal job at really
Yeah.
just building through the draft and just bringing in guys. But more times than not, including the Baltimore Orioles, you watch them trade for Corbin Burns. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Yeah, and you're seeing teams like the Philadelphia Phillies trade for big pieces, sign guys like Trey Turner, sign guys like Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper. The list goes on. JT Realmuto. Like they're bringing in guys who are franchise players.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many franchise players do the Los Angeles Dodgers have, including Clayton Kershaw? I think you're looking at 4 or 5 guys because Yamamoto is that guy as well at times.
Yeah.
So I definitely think at times. I said at times. But
At times, yes.
you know, I really do think you look at the Dodgers, you look at the Yankees, you look at the Phils, you look at the Braves, you look at even the Orioles. Guys are making moves, and they understand that, you know, a prospect thing is cool, but there's a reason why we're doing this. There's a reason, there's a method to the madness. You
Yeah.
know, think about it from the Dodgers perspective. Man, Michael Busch is one hell of a talent. Oh man, Freddie Freeman's available? Yeah, fuck that guy. Give me Freddie Freeman. You know, and now he's the World Series MVP. And that's what we're trying to get at with the Chicago Cubs. It's I believe in all these prospects and I believe they can be great. But the biggest issue with the organization moving forward is who are the superstars of the team versus who are the superstars of the league. Because Ian Happ gives you 20 home runs and 80 RBIs a year, and that's great. Dansby Swanson has Gold Glove defense. But at the end of the day, these guys aren't top 15 players. And that's what the Yankees have with Giancarlo Stanton, with Aaron Judge, with Juan Soto and Garrett Cole. And they're bringing in guys like Anthony Rizzo just to be like, come hang out pieces. Like, we would fiend for Anthony Rizzo over the last 3 years just because Frank Schwindel and all these other guys, you know, like the list goes on. I'm not even going to. Yeah, love Swish. I don't even know where Swish is right now. I think he's overseas. But that was really the point I wanted to make is really just looking at how Theo handled it. He understood, hey, look, you know, I have Javi, I have Addison, you know, I have all these different guys. I have Starlin Castro even at some point. But, you know, you're going to have to trade a Gleyber Torres in order to get over the hump. And unfortunately, it's not the bullpen era anymore. This is a superstar era. So that's where I'm at, Miles. And that's really how I feel. I don't know what superstar is left to trade for. I mean, you know, we could have that conversation about Mike Trout and, you know, just handing the Angels an actual farm system because they've been dog shit for 10 plus years and haven't been able to get a top 10 farm system. Like, I don't know how you're that bad and the farm system's that bad as well for so long. But
that's what scares Jed. He's like, I don't want to be a bad farm system. Oh no, I'm up for 3 weeks straight. Must keep all these guys. Got to keep them good. No, for Jed. Sure. No, you're on the Cubs. You're a Cub. All right, this is a big market team, not the Brewers.
I don't give a fuck about Des Moines, Iowa, brother. I don't care. Like, no, I'm playing. But man, Miles, I appreciate you being here, man. Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you always tuning in, man. We gotta hit the cages soon. I'm PT cleared, PT certified. I made it out the cemetery. It's where athletes go to die, brother. I made it out. But you're going to see a lot more Miles throughout this offseason. We're going to be trying to break down as many moves as possible. You can also check us out at the At Bat Podcast, sponsored and brought to you by War Media. I'm there sometimes. That's their show. That's their network. I just come hang out with the fellas sometimes.
Mike is a part of the everyday crew. He's being humble.
I'm part of the everyday crew, but I just be, you know, I don't work there. I just be like, hey, you know, and then I leave.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, man, Gabe, Saul, Miles, everybody over there does amazing things as well. And you can check out the fellas also here at the Give Us a Shot Network who do amazing things. If you don't like hearing my voice and you're tired of my face, you could always check out other amazing shows on the channel. We got some Windy City Bulls content coming out real soon. I just hung out with DJ Stewart the other day, kind of talking about what it's like going from Whitney Young to the Chicago Bulls. Absolutely incredible. He's got some sick Chicago tats as well, which we're definitely going to talk about throughout the season. He chopped the dreads today, though. I saw him chop the dreads. I was very upset. I liked the flow he had. I liked what he had going on. But this is Miles Porter. I am Mike Hughes. You are listening to the Shy Kid Podcast, brought to you by iHeartRadio's very own Give Us a Shot Network. So make sure you give us a like, give us a follow if you haven't already. We'll check you guys out later. Peace.
Give them a shot to do what?